You know what soap is, but what do you know about your doc soaping you?
You are listening to Wealth Talks, and today we're sitting here on the Wealth Cruise up in the Crow's Nest on Deck 11. Hopefully we're going to get to see the sun come up here. We're recording a podcast for you with Mr. Krish Dhanam and Dr. John Bergman. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This has been amazing.
Thanks for having me, guys. This has been a blast.
It is a pleasure.
Well, we wanted to take some time here and just kind of look back on the week. We're just going to be in port here in Half Moon Cay in a little bit, but we wanted to get your sense of how this cruise went and what, as speakers on this cruise, what you thought of it. And I mean, you speak around the world. You all got great audiences. What was different about this cruise than some other places you spoke, Dr. Bergman?
I got to tell you, the quality of people and the quality of questions was amazing. I mean, the venue was fantastic. The boat was great. The locations were fun. But the interaction between the speakers and the attendees was phenomenal. I mean, you're talking good, pertinent questions, and just I really felt that we made a difference in a lot of people's lives, and I learned a tremendous amount. I mean, even though I've been aware of both you guys, it was just enlightening. I wrote tons of notes. I got a whole bunch of books I got to read. I mean, honestly, I may have been one of the speakers, but I really one of the most excited participants here. It was spectacular.
That's awesome. And Krish, what about you? You've spoken all over the world and to huge audiences. Here we are in just a handful of people in a room, just enjoying each other. How was the interaction with you?
Well, thanks, Tom. The one thing I've always enjoyed about cruises is the proximity that you have with people before, during, and after. So the fact that you're at sea and you're learning, you're not using that as idle time of just gazing out, you're actually learning. But then when we get on land, interacting, running into the participants in different venues, running into them in the restaurants, that's something I don't experience when I normally do my presentations because I fly in and fly out, or they're there and I leave. But this one, to just constantly run into them and then telling them that we were available for additional questions that may have been of a personal nature that they didn't want to ask, that address some other part of their life. I think that was fulfilling.
So you were talking about different worldviews and how they affect the way that we live every day, but also they affect our finances as well. Can you talk a little bit about some of the key points that you covered?
Yeah, I mean, the word religion gets a toxic name, but the word relationship doesn't. And when you deal with worldviews, you basically look at the tridimensional nature of man, the mental attributes which you guys addressed as to the acumen you need to have, your brain that you need to use to protect what you've invested and how you're going to divest what you've earned. And Dr. Bergman talked about the physicality, how you treat your health, your body is $1 billion thing. But both of you alluded to the fact that both the mind and the body are gifts from God. So I just brought that third dimension into it, but it was because it was a 1, 2, 3 punch, so to speak. People didn't feel they were, I've always been the kind of guy saying, don't preach, try to reach. So
yeah, and that third dimension that you're bringing in is so important. A lot of times people focus on the physical and the the financial aspects, and they don't see the spiritual dimension, how that plays that affects everything.
Yeah, you have to be a cheerful giver. I mean, the old adage is charity begins at home. So, the learning of giving comes. But one of the things I like about when you deal with wealth and health and all of that, you can command people to don't give out of your excess, give because it is the right thing to do. And that's a spiritual attribute, whether you give of your time, whether you give of your talent, or whether you give of your treasure. And trying to create a formula that says the fundamental beliefs that we have affect our work ethic. They give us the dignity to go out and serve, the dignity to go out and do things. And I think that's what I tried to address. So.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, you address it like no one else can. So it is amazing. Your background, having traveled the world, having met some of the amazing people of our time, like Mother Teresa and some of the other people that you've had the privilege to share the stage with. I think it's amazing the credibility that you bring when you're talking about these topics. You're not just talking from knowledge; you're talking from an experience.
Sure.
That
Yeah, and I mean, when you interacting with the participants, like I did not know of Dr. Bergman before the event,
Sure.
and so I went and did a little bit of my own research as he was speaking, because everything he was saying was so cutting edge to me. So that was the other part of it, interacting with the participants. I do realize I come as an expert, but as he pointed out earlier, I leave as one of the most excited students, and so
Cool.
that joy of continuity. And so, I mean, I've traveled a lot and done all of those things. So when I got on the boat, that was nothing new. I've done that before, and people always ask me how are the different ports. I said, nah, it's just it's the same sun and it's the same scenery. It's like all
I'm sure it all
Caribbean
looks the
ports
same
are
after a while.
and I don't need a tan, so that doesn't excite me. But the interactions were really good, and so I mean, as far as experiences go, I would stack this up amongst all the best ones I've had, regardless of the fact that I met other people. I think these guys will hold their own.
All right, wonderful. Well, it sure has been a pleasure spending time with you, learning from you, and it's been amazing.
So you that are listening to this podcast know that we always talk about wealth on this podcast. That's why it's called Wealth Talks. But the old English word for wealth was weal, W-E-L-E. And from that word, we get abundance, we get prosperity, we get wealth, and we also get health. And that's why you were such an integral part of this this whole session, Dr. Bergman, because sometimes people just ignore their health, or they trust their health to someone else. And in today's age, we talked about soap on the introduction of this. You go to a doctor, and they do something called soap. And how does that affect the outcome of what doctors are doing to their patients today?
It's mind-boggling. And, well, it's called subjective objective assessment plan. And so the subjective aspect is the patient describing their symptoms. And we're in a symptom-oriented society, and we're not in an appreciating-oriented society, that those symptoms are there for a reason. So when you look at a fever, coughing, sneezing, diarrhea, mucus production, that is the cure for the common cold. It's allowing your body to go through those processes to recognize a pathogen, build the humoral and cellular responses, and that is what we want, or that's how we're designed. What the TV and media and in the pharmaceutically trained medical system is trained that symptom bad. Oh, you got to take a medication to cover up a symptom. And that's psychotic, because you're suppressing the normal body's adaptation to that stimulus, and you're like driving it deeper inside. This is why when you try and second guess the body's intelligence, there's always a negative result. But I got to tell you, this is called Wealth Talk, or what?
Wealth Talks.
Michelle blew my mind, okay, when she was speaking the very first day, what wealth is. Because I went in there, kind of, ignorant about what wealth is. I'm thinking it's cash. and then I'm, oh my gosh, wealth is health. It's time with your family. It's what you value. It's having a full and complete life. That blew my mind. So when you take that's a full and complete life. When you get doctors talking about how do you feel today, how pertinent is that when 90% of the nerves that come off your spine have no pain fibers? So you're getting these people to describe 10% of their symptoms, and then the doctor, who's supposed to be this all-knowing, all-seeing guy, that you abdicate authority over your health and you give it to this guy, and he's using your awareness of 10% of your physiology to base his plan on, okay, and then he gives, what therapies do they have?
Expensive ones.
Yeah, it's going to be a pharmaceutical product to deal with that symptom, because that way you're going to feel like he understands you, and it's completely backwards on how the body actually works.
Well, Chris, you talked about circular logic, And that's what I see happening in medicine today, is that a patient comes in with a subjective finding. It's all symptom-based. The doctor prescribes something to alleviate the symptom, and what they prescribed actually exacerbates the symptoms, so it becomes worse. And then we try another drug or a higher dose, or maybe some other type of therapy that's even more evasive and expensive. This becomes not only expensive to the pocketbook and to be able to, down the road, for keeping more money for retirement and things like that, but it becomes expensive emotionally, physically, and spiritually as well.
But completely taxing. And it's like having a three-legged stool. You can't have physical, spiritual, emotional health and miss one leg. That baby ain't going to sit.
Yeah.
Okay. And so all three are important. It's when we were talking about physical, chemical, and emotional stress, that your body responds the same way to all three. And anything that an individual is going to do to alter a symptom, okay, based on a pharmaceutical product, because you can have a cough, a cold, or something, and take a blueberry smoothie, and that has powerful antioxidants that helps your immune system.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a cough, a cold, something like that, and you take an antihistamine, that's suppressing your natural immune system response, driving it deeper into your system than if you follow that with an antibiotic or a steroid. And that's common practice. And if you're aware of physiology, that's psychotic. It's totally discounting the intelligence of the body.
So are you saying it's okay to have a cold?
That is the cure for the common cold, to allow the body to go through the processes. It's okay to have high cholesterol because that's a good response to stress. It's okay to have high blood pressure because that is a normal response to stress. So the key is in that subjective finding, the SOAP note part, is the doctor are stopping at the symptom, and they're not looking at where is the cause of that joint pain, the fever, the poor sleep patterns, the bowel movement problems. They're not looking at the cause. They're just trying to solve that symptom.
So we're talking to a fellow here that had both of his legs broken in an accident. You're not saying that when you went to the emergency room, you didn't want some drugs to kill the pain, are you, Dr. Bergman?
I got to tell you, okay, when you first, because a bunch of stuff was broken, okay, my sternum, my skull, and when you first go to an emergency room, and this was a really cool experience, they can't give you any drugs because they don't know if they're going to have to put you into surgery. So they're moving your body around, okay, to take x-rays and stuff to find out, and it is really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So
that does not sound like a cool experience.
Well,
it probably was for you.
Well, in retrospect, at the moment, please, I'm crying like a teenage girl. Okay, there's got to be something to alleviate the discomfort. But they're saying, just suck it up, Buttercup, and we'll get through it. We want to find out what's wrong. And then they gave me my first hit of morphine. That's exactly what I said. Wonderful. I could have ran out of that hospital at that moment. I felt incredible. And then the second hit of morphine was good. And the third one was just a few hours later. I just wanted it.
Yes.
I just wanted it because, and the nurses are going by, are you sure you're in that? Oh, yeah. And I'm lying to the nurses and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm a drug addict.
Yeah.
So after the first day, I never took another hit of morphine because I was scared to death.
Yeah.
Because that addictive quality, that absolute pleasure, instead of experiencing, that what my body was going through. And I wasn't a chiropractor at the time.
Yes.
I was just a guy that was experienced with logic and common sense. And my body's hurting, and it's going to heal.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can relate to that when I broke my back and pelvis in a car wreck. And the opium is wonderful because it takes you out of that chronic or that acute pain. But then, like you said, it becomes very addictive very quick, long before anyone on the outside could even tell you you're becoming an addict. Mentally that that's happening if you're attuned to it. Mm-hmm. So in this, throughout this week, we've stretched ourselves. We've stretched ourselves mentally. We've stretched ourselves spiritually. We've stretched ourselves and looking at things different health-wise. And Krish, you talk about the wheel of life and how we go through life. We're kind of out of balance, and if we go back into reality in the real world, we're going to kind of have a flat spot on our wheel. How can we go from where we're at today, not lose what we've got, and expand the other parts of the wheel of life?
Well, the best gauge for learning, for those that are hearing this and have been through different learning sessions, is a quote I used from Dr. Adrian Rogers, is that learn as if you will live forever, but teach as if you will die tomorrow. So the best way to have balance is to go out and give away that which you learn to someone else, so that you will constantly be searching for new things to get yourself back on track. But when you look at the wheel of life, regardless of how you create the nomenclature for the spokes, let's assume that, each spoke is an area for achievement in your life. The goal is to grow all areas simultaneously to some degree, so that you have a harmonious wheel. Most of us are out of whack. Our career and our finances may be at the top, our spirituality and our relationships may be at the bottom. And as a result, if one spoke is smaller than the other spoke in your wheel of life, your ride's going to go clunk, clunk. By the same token, if you have all areas of your life even, but you have no achievement in your life, you have a very small wheel, and it takes you longer to travel the same distance, and you exert more energy. So the goal is always to grow and have longer spokes and a bigger wheel. But the fundamental is always, when you're learning, make sure you're teaching simultaneously, so that your mind is open to learning new things, because you'll never go back to the same audience with the same information. You always want to come more informed.
Well, it sounds like you're talking about something called generosity, and that was a conversation you and I and my son had when we first got on the ship, is that he was having a discussion with someone, well, you can't be generous and prosperous. You have to, God prefers us to be more generous than prosperous. But what we have found is, if we want abundance, if we want wealth, if we want prosperity in our life, we have to start with generosity. And you talking about giving, not giving back, but teaching what we have, that sounds a lot like generosity to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, at the cost of sounding like a broken record, generosity is giving of both your time, where people need your time. So in the early days of my speaking, I would go and volunteer my time to teach people public speaking. But this was not companies paying me. This was in a prison in Mansfield, Texas. So you're giving of your time. Second is give of your talent. So go serve somewhere in a way that they can use your talent. And third, give of your treasure. But I really do believe that ultimate generosity is when you give all of those three in equal parts, and try to do that every day. So whether it's giving $2 to the person at the corner, or whether it is paying for someone in the drive-thru behind you, these are all natural acts. But you have to, Dr. Joyce Brothers said years ago, you cannot consistently perform in a manner inconsistent with the way you see yourself. So if you want to excel in all areas of your life, you have to see yourself as a person already excelling and doing those things. So
fascinating.
That right there was the coolest little snippet, because little areas of your life that you have this, I don't want to say confusion, but the areas that you coalesce. I mean, you literally turn confusion into clarity. And you get so many of those moments. Thank you. Oh my gosh, just hanging out with you is fun, and that's kind of what the cruise was like.
Absolutely,
it just a blast.
We got to see people all around the ship, so it's not just coming to an event and then leaving, flying away, like so often we do, where you come together for the sessions, and that's just about it. Well, here on the ship, everyone's a captive audience. So what does that mean? Well, not only is everyone coming to the sessions, but then you run into everybody all around the ship. So the conversations that happen on the sidelines are absolutely amazing. And I think that's where a lot of the development of the relationships and the new things come from. So it's been an amazing trip.
So we're planning on doing this again in the future, and we hope that both of you will join us. So if someone's sitting on the sidelines out there thinking, boy, I would really like to do this, but, you're giving me the great audio here on the podcast, why should I spend the time or the effort to come? What would you tell them, Dr. Bergman?
I mean, the personal interaction, the connection that you get with the speakers, and then the life experience, because you're you're going to be, instead of reading about these people, you get to hang out with them. Instead of reading about these places, you get to go there and see it and experience it. I mean, I met people on the shore of San Juan, okay, hiking around the castle that I met on the boat, and that are with this conference, and it's just such a cool connection to see people not in like a teacher student profile, but has friends walking around on the same thing, experiencing life together. You got to make it. I mean, invest in yourself is the best investment you can make, and this is an investment, and not just your vacation. It's an investment in your life, and it's something that you'll hold on for forever.
You know, John Maxwell years ago used to give an illustration of going to the Swiss Alps and deciding to take an excursion. And you can take a small mountain, you can take a medium range mountain, you can take a long mountain, or whatever it is, depending on the time you have. And listening to this podcast is like that versus the real thing. Because he says that as people try to take the big mountain, they come to these halfway houses, so to speak, where they stop and get some cocoa and can look at the beauty and the scenery. And they say to themselves, I've already done more than other people by doing this halfway. Maybe I'll just wait here and wait for the others to come back down and go back, because I still have bragging rights at boring parties because I went halfway. He says, but as they go to the window and watch the rest of the people summit, the woulda, coulda, shoulda, the getting off hesitation hill sets in. So hearing this is the halfway house with hot chocolate. You will not see the true grandeur till you get to the top of the mountain.
That's right. There is only so much we can pack into 20 minutes. Before we close out here for today, Dad, do you want to talk a little bit about the financial aspect? Because we talked about finances as well. It's an important ingredient in this wheel of balance that we're looking at here. And you really touched on the perpetual wealth code, covers some of the fundamentals that we need to have on the foundation.
Well, one of the things that I always wanted to do when I moved into the profession after being a chiropractor is I had so many patients used to come to me and say, Doctor, I just can't afford your care. I'm on a fixed budget. I just don't have the money.
Budget.
And that's a great opportunity to be generous to people, but at the same time, it was a very sad picture because we know that 90% of Americans are going to retire and depend on Social Security for their income. And in the greatest country in the world, the wealthiest country in the world, to me, that is just unfathomable. So, the areas that I see as robbing people of that wealth are the way they think about their life, their spiritual connection to God, because they don't have a relationship, they have a religion, and we talked about that. And then the other area that I'm very well aware of is how people have been fed a lie and believe it and are spending a fortune on their health care instead of just being healthy. And so it's been such a privilege to have both of you on board and to share and to learn from you. And I think that if we can get these areas of our life straightened out, that America can be wealthy again. Because right now we're going down the tubes. There's such a huge transfer of wealth from the middle class to others. And that's going to continue unless people become aware of where that transfer is taking place. One of it's in healthcare. One of it's in the way that, because of what we believe. And we're transferring our belief from God to government, and government never creates anything. It always steals from us. So
fascinating. So any last words that you have for us before we close out here, Dr. Bergman?
Invest in yourself. The next wealth cruise you have got to get to. Okay, and you're going to get a lot more out than what you invest into it. And I mean, in life experience, in knowledge, and how it will be a life-changing event.
Yeah, the one thing I would encourage everybody to listening is this, and that is, don't confuse activity with accomplishment. I mean, we stay busy in all attributes of our life, but take some time for yourself to go and listen to information that can allow you to accomplish things you never thought you could when you set out. And I think that's what this cruise will do for you. And so we look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Yes, looking forward to that. I'm going to tack on a question here,
All right.
Mr. Dhanam, based on that. You said don't confuse activity with accomplishment. Any suggestion on how often you should take time out of a busy schedule to make sure that we're not confusing that activity with accomplishment? Anything that you've seen as a rule of thumb over the years?
Well, going back to what Michelle did on the Wheel of Life and the one that Mr. Ziegler used quite often, I think every day when you look at what you've accomplished, look at all the spokes in your life, and if there's a gap that you haven't focused on one area for 1, 2, or 3 days, it's fine. But make sure you don't go a week without addressing all areas in life that's important. So that's very important. And so every day, try to do an assessment.
Every day.
If you miss activity in 1 or 2 areas, it's not the end of the world.
Sure.
But try not to let a week go by where you've not addressed the most important things in your life at least once. So.
Thank you. That'll be helpful for me, I know, and for those of you listening. Try to take that time every day to set aside and evaluate where you are. Not necessarily that you're going to work on each of these areas every day, but to be aware.
So, John, can we
That's
post that
wonderful.
Wheel of Life on the?
We sure
page
can.
there?
I'll include it as a resource here on the podcast. That way you'll have that resource available. And when we have the information about the next cruise, we'll include that here as well. So it has been a pleasure. You are listening to Wealth Talks, where we talk about solutions for your prosperity. Have a wonderful week.